Today, as part of Crown Forum, we have two tremendously impactful leaders who are going to share with us. They are Danyel Smith and Elliott Wilson. As journalists, curators, and translators of culture, individually and collectively, Smith and Wilson are responsible for presenting and also for right-setting how it is that Black folk are understood and how we understand and love ourselves within and across spaces that too often deny us the room to be authentically us. Among many other things, Danyel Smith, raised in Oakland, California, is a former editor-at-large for Time Inc., the former editor-in-chief of Vibe, and former culture editor for ESPN's The Undefeated. Smith has also written for The Village Voice, Rolling Stone, Spin, the San Francisco Bay Guardian, and the New York Times. In addition to the novels More Like Wrestling and Bliss, Smith is finishing the book Shine Bright, A Personal History of Black Women in Pop for Penguin Random House, and her Spotify podcast, Black Girl Songbook, is currently in its second season. Again, among many other things, Elliott Wilson, born in Queens, New York, is a journalist, curator, author, and television producer. And he is currently the editorial director for culture and content at Tidal. Wilson is also the founder and CEO of Rap Radar and created the innovative live experience Crown, not Crown Forum, but Crown, where he engages notable artists and their lived experiences. Married in 2005, Danyel and Elliott have made no secret of their investment in one another and the culture with projects including collaborative podcasts and hardcover, the culture magazine for the new everyone. And most importantly, at least this is what I hear, this is the first time we've met in person, but Danyel and Elliott are good people. So thank you all both so much for being here with us today. No, that's the most important thing. If you ask me, that's the most important thing.
Yes, sir.
So look, how do you explain this impact that you have on culture?
Man, from my perspective, just being a kid growing up in Queens and witnessing Run DMC, I was born in 1971 and Run DMC kind of hit the ground running in 1982, 83. And just seeing that this art form that I was observing as a young teenager was impacting the world. And that there were kids not only from New York like myself, but a kid in Georgia who likes this music, a kid in Los Angeles. They let me know that hip hop was this thing, this phenomenon that had no bounds with it. And we also felt at that time, hip hop came in an era where it was like disco, where it had a short run. They would say, is hip hop going to be a fad, right? And I believed in this thing. And I just think I drew myself into it. And next thing you know, it's going from being this super fan in the 80s of hip hop to the early 90s of documenting the culture. And I just feel that sort of connection to it. It just was we always felt like we was the underdog, people of color creating this art form and not being heard, and always fighting the bigger stage for our place in the game.
I totally agree with what Elliott's saying. I think we both started out as fans, on different coasts, having different heroes, but definitely having similar experiences. I wanted to make sure we thank you too for that amazing introduction.
Yes.
It is, it's funny you say, what do we do? It's wild to hear it coming back to us. It's just wild. After you've been doing something and being in service to the culture for as long as Elle and I have been, it's still kind of wild to us, honestly. I did want to say one thing though.
Sure.
My husband has been promoted to Chief Content Officer at Tidal.
I know that's right. Word up.
So, I just wanted to make sure that was out there because, because he works hard, we both work hard. And I think the thing that can be said about Elliott and I is that I think what we've earned and what we're known for in culture is that we're both trusted. And I think that the way the world is now, the unfortunate way that media is so often perceived, I think that the idea of being trusted media sources, trusted guardians of the culture, interrogators of the culture, I think that it's priceless. We value it. We talk about it a lot amongst each other. We talk about it with our friends and colleagues, and it matters more to us than anyone could ever know.
So how do you do that? And how do you maintain that integrity given that you all came into it as fans? And then why is it important? I mean, it's just music. What do you say to people who might say something like that, right?
Hip-hop,
we don't even know what that means.
Now, the beauty of hip hop
Right.
is that
Good.
what you learn early from hip hop is that hip hop is never just music, right? It's like it's always culture, no matter what. Maybe if we don't like the way it looks, and these guys aren't traditional MCs, and they sound like they're mumbling, and they're just writing hooks, and they don't rap like Rakim. There's still a cultural element to it. So I think that's what we can't escape. And there's also accountability to our own community and to ourselves. And social media gives you that every day. It's like you say something, you're going to get that instant reaction. We come from an era where we wrote a bad record review. The scenario is like an artist would put out an album, and then they would send it to the media in advance, before it came out, and they would line up our reviews to go with the release of the record. Let's say we didn't like the record. There was controversy with that. The artist wanted to know who we were. That was dressed in physical harm. There were things like that was out there. So it's like there's accountability so much in hip hop. It's hard to escape the fact that it's just music. There's so much elements to it and culture attached to it.
I don't even understand like the idea of it being just music. Like it's like who sings it? The music is my life. Martha Wash and CNC Music back to his record. The music is my life. The music is our life. Like I mean, I literally feel like my brain moves to the beat of hip hop and rhythm and blues and pop music, gospel music, blues music. I think like that. I think in those lyrics and beats and in that history, and try to create with that kind of stuff going on inside of my brain and in my heart. And I know Elliott does too. I mean, he spends a lot of time creating playlists, and you can say, oh, it's just a playlist, and it's like, is it? Oh,
it's storytelling.
It's storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what Billboard called him. Billboard called him a streaming storyteller, because it's more than just, so what are all such and such as, records in chronological order. It's like, what are these records? Why specifically do they matter? What is this playlist? What is the story this playlist is trying to tell? For me, it's like, what is this woman's story? Sometimes men, but they get enough credit. But it's like, what is this woman's life? How did music figure into it? How did she figure into the history of music? So for us, the idea of just music, it's like asking a director of film, like, oh, it's just movies. It's like, is it though? Like, it's really everything, to be honest. It's peace, it's love, it's joy, it's violence, it's craziness, it's problematic, it's wild, it's let's dance to it, it's let's get tipsy and listen to it all night long. It gets
hard to defend at times, it's like you don't like everything about it,
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I used to joke about, like, I could love hip hop, but that doesn't mean that I have to make this whole like diatribe to defend move bitch get out the way, by Ludacris. But at the same time, though,
and we're Ludacris fans.
I'm a big Luda fan. But
yes.
like that record is a great record. It's knocking. But like I can't really support the message of that record, or there's even really the message behind it. Like it's a catchy thing, but like what's the statement behind it? It's like, there's accountability of how you look at it. It's art, it's expression. So we always dabble with that and like what is right and what the right decision is and how do we present things. But like Danyel said, I think the biggest thing we can always be is just honest about it.
Yes.
And that building that honesty and being so consistent and being in this for like 20 something years, makes people trust us. And that's important.
Yes. I feel like too, it's just like giving people grace too. It's like, I feel like when hip hop was first new, and everyone forgets that it started out as an outsider culture. It started out, as Elliott mentioned, as something that we were told when we were in our 20s, that it was never going to last and it wasn't real art. And how dare you try to compete with or act like rap and hip hop is on the level of rock and roll. Like that's the battles that we were fighting. So a lot of times I think we gave a lot of room to hip hop to act a fool, basically, because we were all, but we was all fighting for our space in the mainstream culture and the world culture. And I think though that as we got older, we began to realize, well, now since we've taken over, because hip hop and R&B is the most popular, if you combine the two genres, it's the most popular music in the world. This isn't an opinion of mine. It's not an opinion of Elliott's. These are facts on facts on facts. and just with regard to purchasing and streaming music. So now that we've quote unquote won, or now the hip hop is actually the dominant force in popular music culture, I think it's past time actually to and Elliott and I try to do this, and it's hard, but we try to do this, is to continue to interrogate as much as we celebrate.
That seems like such a tremendous part of how it is that you all have helped to grow and situate the culture, right? Because I think about you all, right, who have grown up with the culture. Again, two opposite extremes, Queens and Oakland, right? You think about it being,
but Oakland is the best though, as long as like don't try to make it like it's even. Oakland.
You see what I got to do with Dr. Rice? Right, Dr. Rice, you see what I got to do with?
He tried to make it seem like it was even. I just had to, okay, so go ahead.
But in terms of understanding kind of those spaces that we come from as people of color who are placed in the margin so often, an underdog culture, an underdog space, having a voice. So hip hop, the music part, we know that, they're components, the pillars of hip hop, right? But the music part was an expression. It was a voice of the unheard, right? How is it that you all understand or place kind of social impact and social responsibility within your interrogation of the culture and the presentation of it? Because what you do is social, it's social justice work. I see it, in many respects, but not in a traditional sense, right? Because I think of social justice as having some form of impact, some form of social impact that is making lives better. And so if we're framing and understanding people and their more whole selves, then what we've done is some type of justice for us in community.
Yeah, I think that we can answer that on many levels. I think one thing that comes to my mind is that, with this pandemic hitting us all out of nowhere, especially last year, I started my own little newsletter just to give a separate aspect of what I was doing out there, like outlet that wasn't, with title or other things I was doing. And I just called it The Motto. And then, when the protests started happening, I felt like a lot of times hip hop was at the forefront of these protests in some ways, but that really wasn't being documented all in one place. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, you may have known that with the, George Floyd that Bun B was there, but did you know Wale was at this rally in Los Angeles? Did you know that this rapper the Corday was in Minnesota? So I started doing small things like that. But I think that whatever social change of these issues happen, hip hop is always there. There's always a hip hop tie-in, and it doesn't have to necessarily be artists. I mean, when you delve deep into all these stories, it's a hip hop story. The thing about hip hop, when we take the mentality, when I was running Magazine XXL and when she was running Vibe, is that the power of hip hop is that we claim these things, right? Police brutality is a hip hop story. You know what I mean? Like that's how we look at things. Like it's connected to our culture. Like,
West Coast hip hop would have never blown up without "Fuck the Police." It just wouldn't have. So I feel like it's always been there. I think that in many cases, hip hop, as brilliant as it is at articulating itself, it's music, it's art. It wasn't necessarily doing the very grimy and specific and hard work of organizing. And I think that a lot of times people got angry at rap. It's like, well, y'all talking about it. Like, why aren't you guys changing the world more than you're changing it? I think hip hop's job, and I think it took a long time for all of us to realize it, was to give organizations and community change agents a beat to move to, something that would inspire them and move them. I think if you look back at the civil rights movement and you see all the artists from Marvin Gaye to Aretha Franklin to everybody who, Curtis Mayfield, you think about the Watts Towers projects, all of these things were based around music that made people move. It brought people all to one place. And I think that hip hop really does do so much of the same. And I think too, when you just think about the power of Black music and how Black music is really the kernel of literally 99% of every type of music that, to me, exists in American culture. And maybe it gets a little bit smaller when you go to global culture, but there's nothing in music almost that doesn't go back to African music and Black music and music from slave culture and reconstruction culture, civil rights culture. It all goes back to that energy of, frankly, wanting a better life and wanting to be free. And when you listen to rap, even like I said, like NWA, you can listen to Jay, you can listen to Missy, you can listen to Saweetie, you can listen to anybody. And at the very heart and soul of hip hop, when you dance into it, like you said, we grew up with it. We didn't just read about it. Mm-hmm. We were at the house dancing to it. We were at the 18 and over clubs, the 21 and over clubs, dancing to it, at shows, sweating our hair out to it. The main thing about rap is this, is like, I'm here, I'm mad, and I want to be free. And I think that Elliott and I know that. So we're always true to that.
If we spark that one thing, it can lead to a lot of education, which now, thankfully, is also at people's fingertips that they can do it themselves.
I agree. I feel like, no, the kids, so to speak, you know what I mean? I'm not even talking about quote unquote millennials. I'm talking about the kids. I'm talking about the 25 and unders, 27 and unders. I'm talking about my niece and nephew, 19 and almost 17. Like when my nephew Hunter comes over to talk to us about music, first of all, he only really wants to talk to Elliott, but whatever. And it's like they learn from each other. Okay, so Hunt comes in talking about what and who does he like Playboy Cardi.
That's a great example, because Hunter's favorite rapper is like NBA YoungBoy, who's a very talented rapper from New Orleans, but right now he's incarcerated because for whatever reason it seems like he hasn't left certain ties in the background as his career's taken off. So, but the great thing about our nephew Hunter is that he knows that he's not blinded by that. He's like, I like dude's music, but he's moving like a knucklehead or whatever. Like, this is what's going on. And and sad that homeboy is incarcerated right now. So I think that they can see both aspects of it.
I think they do. And I think that they've, they have Vibe in the background of their lives. They have XXL in the background of their lives. They have Ebony and Jet in the background of their lives. And I just feel like they're smarter than us, dare I say, in that way that every generation gets a little smarter, every generation gets a little more free. I just feel like when I see Hunter and Elliott talking about music, I don't see one lecturing the other or one being disdainful of the other. I really see an exchange. And I think that that's something to me that hip hop doesn't get enough credit for, to be honest. It's how it's that, used correctly and respected in a way that it ought to be. It really is a catalyst for so much conversation between the generations.
Yeah, I'm jealous of the young men and young women that first heard hip hop because their parents played it for them. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that. Like, that your mama, dad, or your uncle, your aunt, my cousin, maybe I knew a little bit about, Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5 and Freedom and know what that is. And oh, there's Park Jams and then Curtis Blow the Breaks. But my parents weren't playing it. My parents is NWA, turn that shit off. That sounds like noise. Sorry to curse, but you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think there is definitely fathers right now that are playing their sons Rakim, and maybe the kid doesn't love Rakim. Maybe the kid loves Lil Yachty, but it's still sparking a mind, like I said. And I think you'll find that one song, and I think that's the power of music and the power of our culture, that we see way more connectivity than we ever saw in our era.
Yes, without question.
So you all are really preaching to me right now, because I'm thinking about my son. I have a 13-year-old who I'm like, you have to listen to Rakim, you have to listen to Big Daddy Kane, you have to listen to Boogie Down. I mean, I'm listing all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, Dad, I know who it is, but that's not who I'm rocking with right now, right?
I'll come around to it.
I've had young people say that they don't appreciate Jay-Z enough because that's their parents' music, right? So it's that shows you the vibe, but it's amazing.
Yes, but I say to that, just be patient with it. I mean, my niece brings me to Taylor Swift, and I'm grateful for it. I brought her to Rihanna's early stuff. I took her to her first Rihanna show when she was 9 years old. And she breaks all her. She's at school now. She's a junior in college. She's a Smith. She's a little genius, just like Hunter is. But it's they don't want to be scolded. They're in school enough.
Right.
what they want to do. I remember being at my auntie's house and stuff when I was in my teen years, and I found David Ruffin's solo album. I found Enchantment. I found my mom's Michael Franks and all this stuff like that. I remember when Whitney's debut album came out, and I remember when Whitney's debut album came out, and I remember when my older relatives were like, well, she's good, but it's not Aretha.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And my thing is that lady from the oldie station, how can you compare that, right, to Whitney Houston? Oh my God. And then what happened was, as happens, you listen to Whitney, and then one day you're in the car and you hear Aretha Franklin singing. Yeah. And then it clicks for you.
Yeah.
Whitney been listening to Aretha since she was a child. And then you realize it's all on the same playlist. Do you know what I mean? It's a beautiful moment.
So tell me this. We shared a little bit before we went on that Donovan Ramsey, who is a graduate of Morehouse College and is a brilliant writer, and I love to be able to say he was still a part of our research lab, has had the opportunity to work with both of you all. And one of the things, before we hopped on, I told him that we were talking. He's like, okay, these are the things that you really want to ask them. And one of the things he didn't slay our house. He knows no. He slayed no sacred cows. I promise. This is all legit. One of the things you kind of touched on is he said that both of you all are really emphatic about working with young people, and why is it? You seem to get something out of it. Is it because the culture is one that's a youth-oriented culture, or is it just because you're young at heart? Is it one and the same? Why is that the case?
I'm young at heart. I can't speak for Elliott.
I was curmudgeon at a very young age. So. No, I think there's that exchange, right? I think people, I think sometimes, the younger generation can get a little too caught up, if I want to be critical of give me the magic sauce, give me the magic statement that's going to change my life, give me the pull quote, and it's a simple path to success, right? Or a simple path to whatever. But at the same time, their knowledge and their outlook on things and their ambition, like we always said, it is youth driven. They're the heartbeat of it, right?
Yes.
When we were that age, we never wanted the older generation above us to be running the party, right? So it's right. We have to respect them that they're running the dance. Now, I think I've always been critical in hip hop of I'm 50 years old right now. To say I'm 50 years old in hip hop and relevant to the culture, right? We didn't grow up thinking that could be possible, right? You had to hide if you was 40 years old and be put yourself down. Now we see that there's, the Jays, the Puffs, the Nas's, and we're all out here.
Hello, the Sylvia Rones, the Ethiopias, hello.
Executives, rappers, artists, everybody out here now, we can still contribute and still be relevant. But I do think you still need that exchange, right? Because they're that younger thing. And with Donovan, the thing is, Danyel taught Donovan a lot, but Donovan taught Danyel a lot. And that exchange, I think, is what motivates us, and I think that's what's lacking a little bit too. I would always encourage the younger generation that Donovan was smart and great because he's able to embrace learning from others and connect and build a tribe. And I think a lot of times now, because of social media, the individualism is celebrated more than joining a team,
building a group
and learning. So that's what I would encourage younger people. What I try to teach is that you can accomplish more if you find like-minded people around your same age and your same group, or your people. And now the internet brings us all together, right? You can find a kid, David Dennis is a great example. He comes from a blog called Smoking Section, where, we looked at that, they're that was the Wu-Tang Clan of blogs, because this guy, John Gotti, I'm hearing, he's from Nashville. He's found this writer from DC, Justin Tinsley, and who's David Dennis, and who are these people? So, I think that we show that we come from that. We come from leading teams and connecting and with a tribe building things. So I think that's something we could teach the younger generation. And they could just teach us about what's going on and why this thing works. And I think there's always a need of understanding of why is this connecting? Why is this impacting? The simple things that they do on the computer with social media and cutting videos and voice memos and things like that, that we feel is they can instantly they've always had computers, right? They've always had phones.
Never not had them.
They've never not had them. So they're so empowered in what they don't think is a lot of thought
That's
to
the
it.
thing.
They see it intuitively. We respect the art of it.
And,
you know?
and I think that that's the exchange, really. Like, one, like if you go back to Donovan helped me so much with Shine Bright, A Personal History of Black Women in Pop. And one of the main things I remember that Donovan used to tell me, and he's by a house in Brooklyn. I mean, Donovan has done the work of angels, honestly, with regard to me. So he's just, I get emotional thinking about him. He's such a genius, and he's got such a long and amazing career in front of him. Meanwhile, 8 years ago, he's sitting in my house organizing my, archives or whatever, just being, a genius in that way. But something I think, to Elliott's point, that is important between the generations is this. Donovan would sit up and listen. I would be working so hard on a particular chapter, and I just know that I have my stuff together so tough, and I'm just really doing it. And then meanwhile, I'm just BSing with Donovan, and I'm telling Donovan a story about A, B, and C that happened. And Donovan would say, "Okay, but is that in the book?" And I would say, and I'm like,
everybody knows that story about Beyonce.
No, I tell that story at the bar all the time. Like, my sister's tired of me telling that story. Don was like, "You told me that story 6 times, and I'm still not tired of it." Yeah. He's like, to me, that's wildly interesting and important and relevant to the generation that we're in. Yeah. So I'm like this, okay, well, let me go ahead and add in. But then I'm talking to Donovan. And Don was like, whoop, whoop, whoopty, whoop, about whoop, whoop, whoopty, whoop, and this is boring, and this is tired, and I'm not into it, and this and the third. I'm like, that's that right there that you just said is a whole book. Have you written that? Well, I don't think it's important. It's just, it's me and my friends, or it's just da-da-da-da-da, or it's like just like it's an identity thing. We talk about that all the time, and I'm just like, I don't know anything about that. Me and my friends don't know anything about that. Yeah. We're the largest book buying, movie going group in the United States of America. Hi, can you talk to me about that, please? And he's like, okay, well, shoot. So my thing is, it's like that, the way that feeds to me is where the magic is. And to me, it does happen at social. To me, it does happen on Zoom. Yes, to me, it does happen in, Google Meetups and this, that, and the third. And I know we're in a pandemic right now, but I will say this, that the magic really happens when people are able to be in each other's space. Mask up, backs up. But when you can literally sit up, I have so many, I call them my baby girlfriends, and I shouldn't, because my baby girlfriends are grown, tough, brilliant, in their 30s, have just like so much creativity, great jobs, great projects. I call them my baby girlfriends. But when my baby girlfriends come over here and we sit up and Elliott's pouring us rosé, thank you, and we're sitting up.
Then I gotta go back upstairs.
Then he has to go back upstairs. And we're talking about the music of now. Then that leads to the music of the last decade. And then maybe the decade before that. And then maybe we talk about what love is right now. And then maybe we talk about how we're going to survive this situation that we're all in the world right now. And then we go back to what movies from the 1980s reflect upon the movies that are, popular right now. And then all of a sudden that happens, everybody's tipsy, everybody's fun. But then in the chat, in the follow-up chat, then it's very like, oh my God, you remember that thing you were talking to me about yesterday? Me and you should do this and build this together on that, right? Or, oh my God, you remember that thing we talked about last night at your house? I was talking to these 2 other people at my job, and I think we're going to do a segment on that at such and such. This is where culture happens. It's people the exchange, the interaction of the generations, the races, the gender ID, everything. That's where it happens to me.
We need the exchange. That's why us folk took over social media. We turned Twitter and Instagram into was not whatever it's intended to be. We took it over, we changed it.
Yes.
So how are you all able to do that? One of the other things that needs to be said here is that both of you all in your 20s and 30s were head of multi-million-dollar brands, right? And not only that, but you were competitive, Vibe and XXL. How are you able to do that, to kind of bring the culture under one tent? but still be competitive, but not be exclusively individualistic. There still is this kind of collaborative interplay. How do you do that dance?
The thing that we are always clear about from our era of competing against each other is we did not collaborate. It was difficult, but we came to the decision early in our competitive era and it was a competitive era, not just like between us. And we have, if I do say so myself, a relentlessly like strong like bedrock of love and respect. So a little competition at work wasn't gonna hurt nobody. I'm not saying it didn't take discipline and we didn't have tough moments, but for us, as we often say, the marriage is bigger than the both of us. So we did not collaborate. I had a brand to run. He had a brand to run. We had teams of people that depended on us. And it was a time, I think, when, as a leader of a brand, people that worked for you, in the best cases, believed in you. And there was no way that we were going to cause our teams to not have the faith in us that they needed to have for us to build monthly publications really that required us in every day of our jobs to make $1 out of 15 cents, to forget competing against each other, but competing against the white rock mainstream magazines that dipped into the culture every now and again to get what they could.
Trying to snatch salt and pepper away.
Yes. Like, so it's like back then it's like your squad was your squad. Like it was just a very different time. Like we were fighting for our lives at those magazines every single month.
So, but what makes that? How do you get to how does that define how you were then? And is there something that translates to now that these young men who are watching you all can kind of take from it? I hear discipline. I hear bedrock of love and respect for one another, respect for the culture. Is being able to be very clear along those lines what it is that allows for you all to have been successful, trusted, and then also radical?
I think it's personal integrity too. It's just how you carry yourself.
I do.
I think what's unique about this space now is you talk about the magazine background back then. I think we all felt we were fighting for one thing, right? To be the biggest newsstand sell. I think the world's opened up that now when people look at what it takes to be successful or build brands or whatever, we don't necessarily feel like there's only this one magic spot. We're all fighting for this one spot anymore. So it allows creatives to run your own race in a sense and be dope and do great work. Tidal, we do amazing work. We're not trying to necessarily be the biggest DSP. We're going against mega tech giants. We're going against Spotify's and Apple's, but I'm proud of the work we're doing in Tidal and I know what that represents. So I think it's a different landscape now. I think that it's all about really moving with like integrity and hard work and telling your story. And I think it still comes back down to that.
I mean, I do completely agree with that. And I also think that it's very hard for people today who grew up with rap in the way that they never didn't have rap. There was never time in their life where hip hop was not a thing in a culture, right? We didn't have that luxury. Okay, so when Elliott says we're both fighting to be the biggest and the best at the newsstand, to be in service to the most people of color that loved hip hop, the thing that we were in service to underneath that powered that, was that we were in service to just like keeping hip hop alive. We were in service to making the larger culture respected. I mean, again, I think it's very hard for people to understand. There was a time when people had no respect. The mainstream culture, the way they lift up people like Puff now, and Big now, and Beyonce now. When Beyonce came into the game, they wouldn't even give her a Vogue cover because she was Black. This is real life. Google it. Beyonce's on the record as saying so. Like they weren't, mainstream culture was not lifting up the like, who's my guy in Atlanta? Childish Gambino. Like they would look at a Childish Gambino and be like, no. You know, they would look at Lizzo and be like, pass.
Right.
But we were working with those types of artists and trying to cover them, to talk about them for the art that they were making, for the impact that they were having on culture when Black artists couldn't, outside of Arsenio Hall, get on even late night television at all.
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith is hosting Kimmel.
Right, that's right. That's right.
Right.
Yes,
And when we were the age of your students, or the first jobs after being the age of your students, this was something that was very difficult for us even to imagine. It was something that we were fighting for. And so to me, that fight never leaves you. And I think that whatever is the fight of your students, hi y'all, is you got to get right, to me, with allowing that to power you. That's whether you're Wall Street, that's whether you're a community organizer, that's whether you're creative, or best to me, some combination of all, right? But you got to figure out what powers you beyond, like, I'm gonna get me a raise, or I'm gonna sell the most. It's like, but what's powering you? What's really powering you? And even to me right now, like with Black Girl Songbook, what powers me is, I say it every time, I'm trying to give Black women in music the credit that they are due. When I was in Vibe, I had a similar type of thing. I was like, at Vibe, we claim everything. Because my thing is, mainstream culture either trying not to claim us, or trying to over and unfairly claim us.
Or claim us wrong.
Mm-hmm. So my thing is like, we claim everything. So my thing is, it doesn't work for everybody, but when people say, well, Danyel, what got you to where you are, which is just wherever I'm at.
Sometimes the kitchen, sometimes the dining room.
Like, what got you where you are? It's like, where am I at? My thing is, I have, Ellie and I always talk about this. Everybody got up, and students should know this. Your career, everything doesn't always just go in a linear fashion. Sometimes you decide you're going to be this, and then, that doesn't work out, and you decide you're going to be that. Or you decide, this is a year that you pay more time to your family. Or this is the year, where my mental health issues are just too much, and I just can't really work in the ways that I've worked before, or the ways that I'm going to work in the next year. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, if you just always are paying attention to, like, who am I and what am I really trying to do? Mm-hmm. For me, even in my down years, when I just was feeling like, I don't even know if I want to be doing this anymore, then I just paid attention to my main goals, the things that mattered most in my heart.
And the haters don't prosper in this world right now. Like, you can't be no hater. Like, you have to be grown enough, even young folks, 20-year-old, like, to respect the achievements of others, right? Like, it's like this. Sometimes we get caught up in this really competitive, like, put you down so I could come up. But I feel like that doesn't work in this era. Like, it's about really building your own thing and being successful in your own right, and, like, having respect for others and playing the game the right way. I come from very, like, loving sports, and that sports background. Like, there has to be a certain level of sportsmanship and grace and strength in what we're in. Like, that loudmouth, aggressive type tone of putting people down, like that. Those people, if you look at hip hop history, those people didn't last.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've taken more time than we agreed to. I want to thank you for that. I really think it's so important for college kids, I think, to see your example and for you to be underscored and highlighted. I think that the words that you've used are so important. You're talking about grace. You're talking about community and collaboration. You demonstrate love. And this integrity and trust. I mean, those are all the best things of the best people who are trying to give life and light to the world. So I thank you both so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Rice.
Yes,
appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. We really do appreciate you having us, and just also for you doing the work that you do. Really, there's nothing more important.
Well, you're generous. Thank you very much. Don't hang up yet. I want to say goodbye. So I'm just going to stop recording.
Dear old Morehouse, We have pledged our lives.